Welcome to Alzheimer Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer Speaks. Today, we're going to have a really interesting conversation. We are doing part 2 on incontinence, sound, and sleep, and what the heck do they have in common? But before I introduce you to our guests, I always like to do a couple of shout outs. So one, I want to shout out to Twiddle. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they have some wonderful sensory aids that can really help with calming people down that are having some anxiety. Maybe it's sundowning, but great tools there. They have another item called Adapt a Wrap, which is ideal for people who have maybe some mobility issues when you're trying to get them dressed and uncomfortable with having something pulled over their head. Their URL is the number 4 and then twiddlesplural.com. Also, Lorenzo's House is having their youth summit this summer in June, mid-June, and you can find out more information on that by going to lorenzoshouse.org. And then I really want to make sure you're aware of this. Mods Awards is going to be closing their applications on May 13th. So you want to get your applications in. Again, organizations have the ability to maybe win $25,000, and for individuals up to $5,000. That's a lot of money for a program you have already done. So go to modsawards.org. That's modsawards.org. Now let's introduce you to the panel today because this is going to be a really fun conversation. Well, I am so excited to have the gang at hand today. This is going to be a really fun conversation. We are going to be talking about how the heck does incontinence and sound and sleep, correlate, and how can we help everybody get a better night's sleep, because it affects how we interact and who we are and the whole 9 yards. So I am going to have each of our guests introduce themselves because they can do a much better job than I can. And Deanna, if you wouldn't mind starting.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, Lori, for having all of us here today. I know I always look forward to our conversation, so I'm excited for this chat today. So I'm Deanna Vigliotta. I'm the National Sales Manager for the Seni brand, which falls under our parent company, TZMO USA. So we're high-performing adult incontinence products tied with education to help people get a good night's sleep.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Dr. Laird.
Thanks, Lori. I'm Dr. Rosemary Laird. I'm a geriatrician and a memory care specialist, and also just in favor of anything Seni does. And so when Seni wants to have me come talk about challenges that people face as they get older, I'm there. I want to spread some education and information that people can use, make their days, nights better.
Fantastic. Thank you. I feel the same way about Seni as I do Composure. And you, Dr. Laird, you guys are just powerhouses in your own rights. And I love it when these collaborations come together and voices are raised to really give common sense information out that sometimes we overlook. So, Jeff, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks for having me. So I'm Jeff McSpadden. I'm co-founder and CEO at Composure. We're a technology partner for senior living communities, CCRCs, assisted livings, memory care, and we're focused on using the power of sound in all its forms to support better health. And in particular, our focus is on improving sleep quality for folks that are living with dementia, in particular living with dementia in congregate living settings, which has its own unique challenges and opportunities there. So really happy to be part of this conversation and to join in on advocating for better sleep.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, the next question I always ask every one of our guests is, have you been personally touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends? Because it's different than that when you're dealing with clients and customers. So, Jeff, I'm going to go to you first on this one.
Yeah, definitely. First sort of prominent example in my own personal experience is my grandmother, who is no longer with us, but she experienced dementia towards the very end of her life. In certain ways, it was merciful that it was really just in the last, couple of years that she was with us. But it was fairly extreme, with a lot of delirium and delusional sort of times and periods in her waking life. And beyond that was another experience with my great grandmother, which was her mother, who had the good fortune of meeting when and getting to know when I was pretty little. And she was being cared for at home by her daughter, my great aunt, and yeah, and really had some interesting experiences with her. It's interesting, as you've all said over and over again, if you meet one person with dementia, you meet one person with dementia. It was very similar in that, duality, because it expressed itself so differently for my grandmother than it did for her, for my great grandmother, because my great grandmother just basically was in a pleasant sort of, haze almost. But she seemed very, very happy with just however life was handing her cards, But anyway, I don't want to go too long. I just sharing some of that.
Appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
nice to hear that personal story. How about you, Dr. Laird? Have you been personally touched?
So you may remember last time we were on, I said no, but as life will happen, as life goes on, things change. And so yes, we have in my personal family now have had a dear loved one diagnosed, and it's been a really sort of interesting and challenging, as you can all imagine. And I've been struck really by the impact on the various different people involved, from my children all the way up through my my mother and my in-laws and my husband. Everyone at their different levels, at different points in life, are impacted by this diagnosis differently. And it's been interesting for me as a physician to see it. But what's been heartening is that the awareness of where to get information has been much higher among the group of people I've been watching learn about this diagnosis and start getting used to this life with this diagnosis than I know it was in the past. So people like yourself, especially, and really, Jeff and Deanna, all of us who are doing this kind of work, I think it just gave me a real sort of affirmation of that work and appreciation of it all, because it is necessary and really plays a big role when those diagnoses come.
Yeah, well, I appreciate, two things that you shared. One, that you noticed the different levels, because it used to drive me crazy when they used to say, oh, a dementia diagnosis will affect like 7 people. And I'm like, what family are you from? Do you not have any friends? Do you not have any neighbors, any coworkers? It was like, it's expansive. And it really, to be able to see that in action in to me, it just says this is a disease of community, of society at large, and the ripple effect is so large, and we really need to start looking at it from that source, because no matter who you are or how you're touched, it will have an effect. And many of those people affected are looking for resources and want to come in and help in their own way, but they don't know how. So it's nice that more resources are available, but they still are not really easy to find in most instances. but we're improving. We're on the upswing there, and the more programs we do like this and collaborations and not being afraid of competition but embracing it, because none of us can serve everybody, the better off everyone's going to be. So Deanna, how about you? Have you been touched?
So on my dad's side, my aunt had dementia, passed away from it. And then I think more and more, the older that I get, I have more friends whose parents are diagnosed. And the older that I get, my own friends and I are now starting, I'll get a call and I'll say, hey, I'm not the dementia expert, a clinician, but I'll get calls from friends now that will say, okay, talk to me. I can't seem to get a word out. Do I have an issue here? Should I be thinking about this and so forth? So it's just interesting to go from family members, my parents' age, down to indirect circles of friends to the parents. Now it's coming within the immediate circle. You start to see the certain levels. So yes.
Well, and that they're still asking about parents and aunts and uncles is good, but soon it will start switching. I mean, I've seen that too, where it's okay, now it's hitting our group, our age, because people are getting diagnosed at a younger level many times. And that's a whole nother ball of wax with that too. So, well, thank you guys all for sharing. It just gives us a base. And I loved, I mean, I'm sad, Rosemary, that you are dealing with this now too, but it just shows typically all of us are going to be touched sooner or later by knowing someone and being affected by a diagnosis of dementia. So let's let our audience know, they know who you are. I know if you've been touched by dementia, but what the heck do you do and why are we together? So Deanna, do you want to start out with what is Seni and dive a little bit deeper into what it is you do and how you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Seni is a brand of high performing adult incontinence products. So pull-ups and briefs. But I like to think of the products really as a conduit to better outcomes. My teammates and I, our mission within the USA and within our company is really to help people through education understand the importance of using good products when and if they need them. We are always trying to think of strategies to help promote a lesser level of incontinence for people. So we like to improve incontinence first and say, let's check that box. If we can't, then what we're trying to do is educate people about the importance. It's in this country, unfortunately, for many, many years, we believe that people think of incontinence products and it's due to stigmas and just lack of education, but as a disposable commodity. I'll go to a store, I'll look for a product, I'll buy the most inexpensive product. I think mom's a large, maybe she's a medium. I'll go with the large because it will hold more, is the thinking. It's no ill will. It's lack of education. And we can have unfavorable outcomes when that happens. If someone buys mom or dad a size large and it's too big and they leak and they get up and they fall, now we've got a hospital admission and we're all in this industry trying to say, how do we reduce these things? So my teammates and I are on a quest to really change the mindset to say, let's start looking at products as really a critical component to the continuum of care, and doing a whole lot of education about sizing and features. If you have a product that's breathable, just real quick, a product that's breathable, what does that mean? Well, as a blanket approach, we shouldn't be fixing skin integrity issues, skin breakdowns due to urinary incontinence if we're using breathable products. So we reduce risk, falls, UTIs. We fix a lot of UTIs in this country. Some of those, portion of those, can be fixed, can be remedied by using a good quality product. So we're tying products in with education to help improve outcomes for people that want to age at home, people that are in communities, people in general. So that's what we're doing.
Okay, great. And Jeff, how about you? You want to tell us a little bit more about Composure?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny, there's actually something that Deanna described that I could probably just lift word for word, and it applies to what we're doing too, which is, developing products and educating folks to, promote better health outcomes. I mean, that is exactly a key part of our mission at Composure. What we are just how we're a little bit distinct here is that we're approaching, these health outcomes and driving these better outcomes through the ears, and through the hearing mechanism. So, sound, and I can get more into this later on, but sound is incredibly powerful, and it is something that we typically take for granted as being part of our environment that stimulates our awareness of time and place, but it has a deep influence on human behavior. And when what we saw an opportunity, at large with using sound to drive health outcomes, but in particular with meeting certain challenges. And those challenges, as they pertain to this conversation, is really around sleep quality in congregate living settings, because they are inherently these environments, these care environments are just inherently terrible places to try and sleep. And it's just the very nature of the environment. It is a dual purpose kind of place. So people go there to work, but they also are there to live. There's other people there to live. And those make very odd bedfellows, if you'll excuse the turn of phrase. And so, we've developed sounds, and more specifically, a sequence of sounds that we can now say are clinically proven to improve sleep quality. And it's one thing to have a great idea or a concept or a sort of a initial finding like that, but it really, for us, the key factor was the execution. How do you get this sort of, powerful power of sound in good use by people to benefit people, and how do you do it at scale? So we've developed a technical infrastructure, a technical product, or a turnkey solution, as I sometimes refer to it, to really solve the challenges that are in these environments, and what these individuals face, and what the caregivers and care partners that they're working with are facing too. So we kind of look at it as a solution that ultimately benefits the residents in these communities, but it's also solving quite a lot of sort of staff challenges and business challenges for the community at large.
Okay, great. And Dr. Laird, I'm going to have you just explain a little bit about your My Memory Clinic too. I know we pulled you in as a professional to kind of talk about this collaboration between Seni and Composure, but I know people are going to like, what is My Memory Clinic? They're going to be wondering about that.
Sure. So one of my roles is with My Memory Clinic. So I'm the chief medical director there, and that's a telehealth memory doctor's office, basically. And so it's my private practice where I'm able to provide comprehensive care for individuals who are concerned about memory loss, or maybe a history of memory loss in their family, and they're concerned about their risk for memory loss in the future. So we help everyone from people wondering about risk and how they can prevent memory loss, to people who have symptoms and need a diagnosis of what's causing their symptoms, all the way through the ongoing care and support of individuals who do get diagnosed with one of the memory loss disorders like Alzheimer's disease. And then we're able to follow individuals, since we're all telehealth, so it would be over a Zoom call. We're able to follow people, whether they live at home, whether they transition to a memory care unit or a hospice unit, or go live with their daughter or son. Wherever they go, we're able to follow along and continue with their care. So, and we can provide care not only for their diagnosis, but for the range of things that happen to individuals as we get older. My background is as a geriatrician initially, and then a memory care specialist. So our care the team that works with me, we're focused on everything from the memory loss, but also how the older body changes and is impacted over time. And in addition to that, all the complications that can come with a diagnosis like Alzheimer's disease. So that's really where I ended up meeting Deanna, is when I was in my a different clinic, a traditional brick and mortar clinic, and we met and became acquainted. And because my patients so often face urinary incontinence, I was looking for a company that was focused on providing products that really did help towards those better outcomes that she was referring to. So that's how we ended up meeting, was through my work day after day with people facing both memory loss and urinary incontinence.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think sometimes people are leery of going to the doctor, and it was nice that you explained everything. You're here for the whole journey, to process them and support them through that. And I think people will find that very comforting.
And in this case, they don't have to go anywhere. They just stay home in their favorite chair or at the kitchen table, whatever they want, and they're at the doctor. And that's proven very, very appealing to certain people. And it's been very helpful. So.
Thank you. Deanna, do you want to talk about the connection between you and Jeff and how you guys came to match up and collaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And Jeff, if I miss any pieces, please feel free to jump in. But we at Seni had submitted a proposal about a year ago, probably around this time, to present an educational presentation about sleep to the Center for Innovation, which is the umbrella of an acquisition or a merger, I should say, or maybe I don't have that terminology right, but the Greenhouse Project and Pioneer Network, those two organizations came together to form the Center for Innovation, and they do an annual conference, which is just wonderful because it's very focused on a person-centered approach to care overall. And so we did a submission to present, and Jeff and his company submitted to present, and then one of the folks at Center for Innovation got in touch with us separately and then put us together and said, I have an idea. I think we can have you both present, but I think we can improve upon it to really bring more robust value together. And so it was this individual, Penny Cook is her name. She's been in the industry for a long, long time. Very, very smart lady. But so she introduced us. We had a conversation and we clicked immediately. And the common ground, really the connection. What's the connection? It really is about better sleep, better outcomes, restorative sleep, how that all ripples out into a host of, it's like a big spider web in a wonderful way when people are able to get good restorative sleep consistently. So we started talking, we did that presentation together, and it was a lot of fun and informational behind the scenes for me to learn about Jeff's company and all the great things that he was doing at the time and continues to do. I know he learned a lot about Seni, and it was just, it felt right. I'm a gut person. It just felt right because our mindset is, let's do the presentation and let's help some people. We may not know directly who we're helping, but indirectly, I think we bring enough to the table to help people have better outcomes. And so we presented, we've been in touch ever since. And he's just, I can't say enough about his work and his passion, and really important to me, his character as a human being to help people. As Dr. Laird always says, you align yourself with the right people. And wow, that's powerful of the things that we can do together. So what did I miss, Jeff? What did I miss?
Not a thing. And the feeling is mutual. I mean, that's what I've always felt to be true, is you want to surround yourself with good people with good hearts and good intentions. I also sort of add to that, I want to be surrounded by people that are smarter than me. And I'm definitely doing that here. So, it's been wonderful, and that shared connection around sleep was just like kismet, I think, for us, to bring our different perspectives together and you know, to benefit a greater whole, meaning the session that we presented for people, and I think it went over fairly well, and we're looking forward to potentially doing a continuation on that theme at this year's conference, if not some other opportunity that we have coming up. So yeah, it's just been really, and honestly, I think like you, Lori, I was kind of tickled by this idea of like we come at this same problem from such different perspectives, but when you take a moment to kind of break down the why, the why does this work, it actually makes a ton of sense. What we're doing in the ways in which we're trying to support better sleep health, which is really a tent pole for overall health and well-being. So really excited to be in partnership with Deanna in every way we can.
Well, and I'm glad that was it Penny, I think, that matched you two up and said, I think you'll be better together than apart. And I'm a firm believer in better together, period, as we do stuff. But again, it just sparks people's interest, because we're so good at categorizing and, this goes in this slot and this goes in that slot, and everything overlaps that we do. And so finding those ways to kind of stitch our work together to really improve the greater good is remarkable, and we can have such better outcomes usually when we do that together. Now, Dr. Laird, I want to go to you because Deanna had mentioned restorative sleep, and people are like, sleep is sleep. What's the difference? But sleep isn't sleep. So can you kind of explain that to us?
Yeah, and as you get older, sleep is less sleep than sleep, right? So some of my patients tell me there's a lot that goes on after midnight when you get older you didn't know about. So yeah, sleep is so huge. And I love Jeff's visual there, that tent pole. Sometimes when I'm doing a visit, I'll tell people, I want to review a typical day in your life. Let's start with, tell me about how you sleep, because that sleep is such an important entry point to the day ahead because of what it means that it is restorative. So at the body's level, when you say restorative sleep, the body is doing repair and growth. So it's repairing the wear and tear that has gone on over the course of the day, and it's growing and preparing to be better positioned the next day, even though you had some wear and tear. So if you think about it, that maintenance that goes on, that restorative period of time that goes on, it really needs to go on. And if it doesn't go on, that is in many cases an accelerant of more wear and tear that as you get older is going to accumulate and not be able to be overcome. We all know, the all-nighters and the crazy lifestyle, you can do that when you're younger. The repair systems are just that much better. But as we get older, our bodies are that much more dependent on restorative sleep. And it's that much harder to get for other reasons. But that's why we have to pay attention to it so much. In our patients, our loved ones with any of the memory loss disorders, there's plenty of evidence that they have much higher rates of all of the different sleep disorders. So more insomnia, falling asleep, more trouble staying asleep, more sleep awakenings, more trouble with early morning awakenings. All of those things are just reducing the period of time that their body has to do that restorative work. And so they actually have a faster, more accelerated aging process to some degree, along with the unfortunate changes that are coming because of the dementia itself. Because that repair and growth is particularly important in the muscles and the skin tissue. It's really important everywhere, but muscles and skin tissue, they turn over a lot. So our muscles, even as we get older, are very living, parts of our body. So they're constantly breaking down and coming back new. And the same is true with our skin. So if we now think to urinary incontinence, that's a real problem if we have muscle weakness, thinking about the pelvic floor that holds up the bladder and keeps everything in place, thinking about our leg muscles that help us get up off of a chair and get to the bathroom in time. All of that is very, very involved in being able to control your bladder and be able to have full continence. The skin tissue, and Deanna referenced earlier the importance of what kind of materials we use if we do have some incontinence, because the skin tissue, if it's not getting the repair and growth overnight that it needs, it's very fragile and very likely to be harmed if there is any incontinence. So all of that really sets our loved ones up, especially who have dementia, for urinary challenges. And it's all starting from the tent pole of, how much sleep are you getting on a regular basis? So, and it's a little bit similar to Jeff calling it the tent pole. I want to tell people that the number of sleep hours you get is an important vital sign. So we sometimes ask people, how many hours are you getting at a time during your overnight sleep? The goal is 7 total. So most of our older adults, I tell them if you can get to 4, we're happy, and try to do that once or twice throughout the course of the night.
Wonderful. And I really appreciate that you broke it down into real simple language. But some people out there, they've heard of REM sleep and different things like that. So is the REM sleep this restorative sleep? Just to clarify, if people are using some of the verbiage out there.
Yeah, sure. So neither the REM sleep is part of the restorative sleep because it represents a deeper sleep. And I didn't really mention it, but the other part of our body that has to repair and grow is the brain. And there is a lot of evidence that REM sleep in particular is one of the best parts of sleep to help the brain kind of reset and get its own restorative period of time. So that's why people who don't have the usual cycles of deep sleep and any changes to REM sleep, those individuals are particularly at risk for daytime symptoms that reflect that. So that can be a problem, and there is a whole category of sleep disorder related to REM sleep disorder. So if someone's having difficulty with sleep at all, I definitely recommend people taking time to talk to their primary care provider, because it is challenging to figure out what's happening, but it's also very fruitful, because if you do sort of look at the different parts of sleep and just take some time on it, often you can get at least some idea of a place to improve things. And what I don't want people to do is go to the drugstore and get a sleeping agent over the counter. Those are particularly bad choices for the older body in particular, and especially for our loved ones with any of the memory loss disorders. So please, if anyone is having significant trouble getting good sleep, they should definitely bring that up. Sometimes people don't think of that as a symptom that you would bring to a doctor, but we're here to tell you it is a vital part of your health in general. So it's as legit as chest pain, and it's not as acute perhaps, but it's a totally legit reason to go make an appointment with the doctor and talk over, the fact that you or your loved one isn't getting a good night's rest.
That is so helpful. I mean, I hear from so many people diagnosed, but also their care partners, because when the person with dementia is not sleeping, and that's my realm, but this affects everybody. The care partners aren't either. And, that can take its toll on everybody. So it really does need to be a priority. I think we've gotten in this society to just accept, well, I'm older, we just don't sleep. like we used to. I mean, that has been a pattern, I think, of acceptance out there.
Mhm.
But you explaining, the skin breakdown, the brain, the muscles, all of that. I mean, I had not heard the muscles and the skin piece before. I had heard the brain piece because of the dementia arena that I'm in. But boy, there's a lot of complications with those two other things that affect all of daily living. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that. If you are just tuning in, we are talking to three fabulous people about, what the heck does incontinence, sound, and sleep have to do with one another? And this is part two. So if you haven't listened to part one, you might want to ping that one too. And we have Jeff with Composure. Dr. Laird is with us with my memory clinic, and Deanna with Seni. All of their contact information is in the show notes, so they're easily accessible. We are going to hear real quickly about a fantastic webmaster called QBlocks, and we'll be right back. I also want to introduce you all to QBlocks. They have been absolutely excellent to deal with. They have been in business for 18 years and they serve the globe. I can't say enough good things about this company. I've had a lot of bad experiences. I don't know about you with tech companies. They have made a very complicated process very easy. And their staff is so kind, so polite, so respectful to work with. And when I am frustrated and ready to pull my hair out, they just smile and tell me everything's going to be okay. And they really are just on top of the communication, which alleviates so much stress as an owner when you're dealing with tech issues. You can get a 10% discount. Visit them at QBlocks at QBlocks.com, or you can email them at letstalk@qblocks.com. For that 10% discount, just put Lori, Lori, in the inquiry form. And again, I don't think you'll be disappointed. I surely haven't been. I can't rave enough about this company. And that's kind of rare these days. So, Jeff, I want to talk to you about you kind of have this tagline that Composure is turning sound into medicine. And one, I just kind of go, hurrah, because I am really big on kind of social prescribing, and I'd love to see that take off and people really understand what that means. And I think, your term turning sound into medicine kind of puts that in the forefront. Can you explain to us what the heck does that mean?
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. This concept isn't necessarily new or unique to us. If you want to really dive into it, I think human beings have actually used music therapeutically and medicinally in time immemorial. I mean, since our earliest, walking on 2 feet days. And what's been interesting to see is that as a lot of sort of progression through the 20th century, with music becoming sort of elevated into the pinnacle of entertainment, and and really seen primarily music, I should say specifically, as a form of high art or high entertainment, which it absolutely is. What's been interesting to see in the 21st century is a bit more turn towards functional use of music and sound. So applying it sort of in everyday living to enhance your life, whether it be to increase your focus while you're on certain tasks, or, alleviate stress or anxiety. There's a lot of use cases here. But for us, our sort of turning sound into medicine speaks not just to that part, but also to our commitment in being an evidence-based company and an evidence-based approach to using sound. And what I mean by that is, I sort of tease myself. I call myself an armchair scientist, and I was loving hearing Dr. Laird speak so well on and thoroughly on the benefits of sleep to your physical health and mental health and so forth. And you and I, Dr. Laird, will have to geek out sometime on all the all the depths and breadth of sleep benefits and so forth. But what for us we came to understand is not all sound is created equal when you're trying to drive better health outcomes or better sleep outcomes in particular, right? What we've come to know about the way the brain works when we're listening to our environment or we're listening to, sounds that we put on for ourselves is that music does certain things very, very well. And then frequency-based or other types of approaches to sound, whether they're nature sounds or other kinds of approaches, do other jobs very, very well. But sometimes if you use the wrong thing at the wrong time, it works against your sleep health and the benefits there. So what I mean by this is that, our brains and our bodies have evolved over millions of years to respond to sound for our own survival. That's what it's there for. And that means it's some of the oldest structures in the brain are responsible for processing and responding to sounds. And those are closely linked to our limbic system, which, as we know, is from high school biology class, is linked to fight or flight response, or, rest and digest would be the flip side of that coin. And music and sound, again, when you use them intentionally and at the right for the right outcomes, can drive either side of that response quotient. You can have a sound that is sudden and striking and startling and really activate your fight or flight, or you can have sounds that are meant to soothe and relax and really slow down heart rate and really kind of open up the capillaries and really help relax the system. They're really powerful tools. And if you kind of look at that in comparison to the traditional word or understanding of medicine, which is a chemical or biological substance introduced to the body to change physical function or biological function, that's exactly what music and sound are doing to us. It's how we administer it. It's how we apply it to our lives that really counts. Just like you would with a medicine. You wouldn't take Tylenol to solve a skin rash, right? Like, it doesn't make a ton of sense. It might deal with the pain quotient, but it doesn't really get to the root cause. And so what we're looking at is how can we better develop and deliver sound to drive these kind of health outcomes in much the same way and with the same kind of rigor that medicine would go through.
Well, that's interesting. I was thinking of myself going to sleep, and I have done this to myself a few times. It's like, okay, I'm going to calm down. I'm going to get in a peaceful place. So I'll put on my 70s music and I get my little jive, and then all of a sudden I'm singing along and I'm like, I'm not going to sleep. I'm thinking about high school and all these other things, and I'm relaxed and I'm calm, but I'm not going to sleep.
That is an excellent point. Like, and this is what we've experienced too. And what I mean about not all sounds being created equal. We know that music, the right kind of music, can go a long way at helping kind of decompress, at reducing anxieties and kind of slowing down the inner dialogue in the brain. But if it's sort of the wrong kind of music and something that has sort of, some memories associated with it, reminiscence of some kind, which we know can be very powerful in dementia care, but in other ways, but not for sleep. We really, what we're trying to do is actually kind of just turn off some of those systems so that we can bring about sleep onset a lot quicker. Dr. Laird mentioned over-the-counter sleep aids as being a really bad choice, right? Primarily because what they're mostly designed to do is to just knock you out. It doesn't actually produce good sleep. It just helps you fall asleep faster, generally speaking, right? And so it doesn't guarantee better quality rest. It's really just kind of like, well, I fell asleep, so I must have slept well, and so to your point, Lori, like we in our sequences, we've developed a sort of beginning, middle, and end where it starts with a musical introduction. because that's a really good use of sound to cue when bedtime is supposed to happen, to really sort of bring your awareness to finding that relaxation and that routine. And then music is also great at producing a very calming environment to fall asleep in. But we also know that once you are asleep, once the brain is asleep, if you continue on with that music, no matter what it is, your brain cells and brain activity are going to respond to that, because that's how we've evolved and that's how our brains work. So what we've done is transition that from a musical introduction to a frequency-based approach. We use kind of a base layer called pink noise in what we do to promote deeper wave sleep, which goes a long way at instilling more REM stage sleep through the night and getting those restorative rest qualities, while also alleviating some of the distracting noises that all the things that go bump in the night that wake us up periodically.
Yeah, especially if someone's in a hospital and they're getting checked on all the time, or there can just be lots of movement in a house, people on different schedules, or critters, that need to go potty during the night or whatever it might be. Dr. Laird, I would imagine you have some additional thoughts to what Jeff was talking about.
Well, I think the other thing that can need to go in the middle of the night is us. So really, especially the older body, having to go to the bathroom at night, called nocturia, is one of the biggest problems relating to sleep. And certainly for our loved ones with Alzheimer's disease and those disorders, they're just as likely to be affected by that as others. And then incontinence is also a problem during the overnight hours when you're supposed to be sleeping. And that sometimes doesn't wake people up, but if it doesn't, you can have the challenge of the skin being subject to, excessive moisture. And that is definitely a kind of a sleep-related urinary incontinence problem that our loved ones with Alzheimer's disease are more prone to, especially as the later stages progress. And, so that's really where I think, especially with my work with Seni, I've been really working alongside them, trying to help people realize some of these situations are harder to control than others. And I love the potential of the sound and the pink noise to do everything it can to give people better sleep for as long as possible. But if there are some of these other physiologic conditions, then it's really important for a caregiver to have a good plan of knowing what to do. And it really starts with, there's really two things. Fluid management, what goes in will come out. And then the second thing is really understanding, especially for our loved ones with a memory loss disorder, that the brain is supposed to be remaining in charge of the emptying of the bladder our whole lives. And often it does stay in charge of that, but what changes is our ability to respond to that signal. So our brain had to learn when we were younger how to respond to that signal. And sometimes as we get older, especially in people with any of the memory loss disorders, the ability to respond to that signal goes away. So in addition to fluid management, like how much and when your loved one is drinking fluid, that's so important. You've got to drink, but when they drink becomes important. So you got to manage the fluid. You also have to understand that you may need to start having the bladder empty by the clock, not by the body signal. And that can be really helpful if we start using every 2 hours or so as a time while someone's awake to help them get to the bathroom to empty their bladder. That can sometimes really help reduce incontinence. But for people who do have those kinds of incontinence troubles day or night, but especially during the overnight, making sure you have a product that, number one, fits right. There's a reason Deanna knows that example about people having too large of undergarments, and that's because they see it all the time. too large or too small, either of them don't help people. And it doesn't always work just to wear 2 pads. I've seen a lot of people just put 2 pads on, and that doesn't quite work like you might think it would. So that's not a good strategy, but Deanna can probably share some of the places where Seni has some good material for anyone who's trying to figure out, like, how could you get your loved one a product that would, as much as possible, keep their skin dry. That's really the goal for if you do have someone that you love with incontinence, the goal is sometimes we can't make that stop completely, but what we can do is protect the skin. And the way you do that is by using, good products. But we also, like Deanna said, try to reduce the amount of fluid as much as we can that's lost too. So I think that's sometimes an important point that people haven't been told before, is that you can adjust the timing of when your loved one takes their fluid in, and you can still help them have the adequate amount of water throughout the day. Your body will figure it out, even if you're having fluid maybe at the beginning of the day, so that by the end of the day, they're not drinking as much. That might help them get a better night's rest. So you got to take control of that. And then you really want to think through how you're helping keep your loved one dry if they're having an incontinence problem, and start following the clock as much as possible.
Oh, great advice. One of the things I think we need to do is really, get rid of this stigma, because people don't like talking about the topic. They're embarrassed by it. And yet, and I know on one of our other shows, I mentioned this, I said my daughter would probably kill me, but our younger generation, they embrace the briefs. So when they're pregnant now, they're not slowing down. They're going to live their life. They're going to stay active. They're going to do what they want to do when they're going to do it. And if that means they're going to wear briefs instead of these big bulky pads, that's what they're going to do. And these young kids don't think twice about that. My generation wouldn't have ever thought of that, and B, didn't embrace that at all. But they have a whole different attitude in terms of, life is to be supported, and this is a product that supports good living. And it takes out, the work, the embarrassment, the changing of the sheets, the slipping on the floor, the extra showers. There's so much that goes into this when you have that issue. And I would love it if the rest of us would embrace that philosophy of living well, to reduce any angst and ease your life. And in doing that, we can get better sleep. We can have more mobility. We can have less wasted time having to clean up after an accident for all of us. There's so many benefits of it. And so, but I loved the getting on schedule. I loved hey, you need to drink the water, because there's a lot of people out there go, and I've had friends, parents do this. I'm just not going to drink the water because I don't know if I'm going to make it to the bathroom, because they didn't want to use an incontinence. They didn't want to deal with that. So their way around it was to, okay, I'm going to get dehydrated and pass out and crack my head on the floor. And then boom, they're in the hospital, and everyone's like, how did that happen? And it's a very common occurrence, but it's not healthy, because our brain also needs that water. It's made mostly of liquid. And so we've got to have all this stuff functioning together. And so again, thanks for breaking that down and getting people to think about just, train your body to go every couple of hours, go in. I think even with toddlers and stuff, it's like, okay, come on, when you're doing the training and stuff, sometimes that's what it takes, that extra prodding. We don't think we have to go if we're not reading those signals, but boy, we sit down and isn't that something? We're going to the bathroom all of a sudden and releasing those liquids. So Deanna, why don't you go ahead and add on to what Dr. Laird said, because I think you guys have such a variety of products, and there are so many little tweaks that make such a huge difference. And I never knew that. I just, I would go into Walgreens or whatever, and I'd walk down the aisle, and I would just see all these products, and I just, as a novice, just assumed they were all the same. But after, learning from you, there are so many differences that people don't know. They're just like, I'll grab it, I'll get out of there, no one will know I have them. I mean, that's kind of the mission a lot of people go in um, to get those products. So talk a little bit more about Seni and how you're different and what people really need to look for and the why.
Yeah, so happy to address some of those things. So a few years ago during COVID, our team, as everybody was pivoting in the different channels, we thought, well, what are we going to do during this time? And so we really thought about our why, our educational component. We've put together a lot of information and flyers. One of those educational components that Dr. Laird helped us with is called our Seni selection tool. SENI is the acronym. And I do feel that sometimes we need to put the I first, because first and foremost, nobody wants to be incontinent, right? So we want to help people improve some level of incontinence to get to a less severe level of incontinence whenever possible. So some of those strategies, fluid and bathroom breaks and things that Dr. Laird was addressing, all come into play. But I'm always I love to learn, and I'm always learning. And when I think that I have my arms wrapped around things, I realize, oh, I probably know about 10%. So back to Jeff's point, I like to surround myself with the smarter people in the room. But I was at a caregiver forum recently, and Dr. Laird was speaking. And one of the things that I thought was very interesting in terms of a strategy to potentially improve incontinence to some level. Dr. Laird, you may recall, but you just mentioned such a simple thing. And I went home and I talked to my husband and said, I found this to be interesting, where people lay on which side of the bed. If you have a bathroom in your bedroom, and I know for my husband and I've been married for a number of years, we have the bathroom over here. My husband sleeps here and I sleep here. If we fast forward down the road, I hope, knock on wood, this does not happen, but fast forward down the road, let's say I'm the person who starts to have some level of incontinence, and maybe my legs don't work so well, but I have my faculties. If I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night and I get out on my side and I have to go all the way around, I open myself up to risk. Whereas just saying to my husband, hey, we may have to switch here at some point. I need to be over here. And now I get up. It's a simple, no cost strategy, but it's just thinking about these things. I found that probably the most powerful little golden nugget. There were a million of them in the presentation that you did, but I love things like that, that just little strategies that help. So that's our I, improve incontinence. Okay, now we have incontinence to a newer level, hopefully, or maybe the strategies just don't work and we have a person who's incontinent. We want to help them. So then it's important to go to our S in Seni and look at sizing. Looks at hips and waist versus height and weight. We get a lot of calls from people and they'll say, gee, my mom or my dad is, 180 pounds and they're 5'11". What size do I need? And we try to nicely redirect and say, oh, can you get the waist and the hips for a better fit? That's ideal. If someone says, well, I can't, I don't have a measuring tape, and we say, okay, we'll help. We're here to help. Maybe take a picture of the package that you have and let us know. We can match up. Brand to brand, sizing varies, but sizing is critical to good fit and good comfortability for that person. So we look at size, and then we go to the E, which is evaluate mobility and essential features. When I think of mobility, more active people or people that may have light or moderate continence, they just may need a pad versus a brief, right? Or people that have dementia may do better with a pull-up, may be less stress for the way that their mind is now functioning. So we've got a variety of products. So it's very important again to look at the person and say, do they need a pad? Do they need a brief? What's more comfortable? What's the size? And the essential features, I go back to full breathability. Look for a product, whether it's Seni or another brand. People like choice, but make sure you've got full breathability. And I mean 100%, not just breathable on the wings. Full breathability, inner leak guards, products that are made of soft non-wovens, they call it. They're comfortable. They're softer to the touch. And what that means is if I go out in public, I don't risk, am people going to hear me? Am I going to have crunching? Am I going to have, I don't want to go. And then we get into the ugly effects, right, of social isolation out of fear. You say, no, you'll be okay. Go, have fun, live life. So that's important. And then the N in our acronym is for night versus day products. Dr. Laird brought this up a little bit. Let's say during the day, someone has assistance with looking at the clock and saying, I'm going every 2 hours and I'm okay during the day, but maybe I just want to wear something just in case. Maybe it's a pad, maybe it's a pull-up, it's something, a day product versus now I'm going to bed. I'm hopefully going to get that good restorative sleep and I may need a different type of product. So all of that in a nutshell ties back to, if you look at a person as an individual and you look at a plan, if you're caring for an individual, to say all four of us on the call here today have different shapes, sizes, needs. So as a blanket approach, just if you are living in congregate living or, just looking small, medium, large, there's a lot more to it. We offer free product samples to help guide people into the right product. And then we offer education because our products have leak guards. If I'm a caregiver, that leak guard's going to work a whole lot better if I know how to pull it up and have it work the way that it's meant to work. So I find myself saying good products, if you think of a camera with all the bells and whistles, that's a beautiful thing. If you think of a caregiver, whether they're a family caregiver or a paid caregiver, there's your photographer. Let's do some training to get that photographer to a point where they know the product, they know the camera. And then you get a different picture. It's you get a different picture and a better view. And that's really what we're all about, is to guide to reduced risk of negative clinical outcomes and have better dignity or more dignity, better social outcomes. And at the end of the day, just trying to help people once again. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. All those details that people don't think, and it was kind of slapped me in the face when you said a lot of people talk about height and weight, and it's like, well, you never go buy a pair of underwear based on your height and your weight. They always have those measurements that they want. And so it just really made sense. I didn't even think of that, but you don't question it. You just do what it tells you to do typically on that. And I love that you have this variety, this toolkit to really help people pick the right product for the right time, for the right event, and their comfort level as well. And it's just a really neat thing to have. I don't think I've ever seen this kind of support or this kind of vision to make incontinence, livable, acceptable. We're going to make the best of this and really empower you to live your life and not be afraid of an accident. And that's a pretty cool thing that you're doing. And then there's all these other benefits. So one of the things I wanted to talk about with Deanna and Jeff was, you guys are passionate about reducing, falls and stuff in older adults. And that's been a big push and things. Jeff, how do you see that? How do you see your sound and music rolling into being able to reduce those falls?
Well, it really comes down to some pretty clear evidence that's out there in the world. There's some NIH published studies on this topic that correlate poor sleep with higher incident count of falls and higher risk of falls. So really, the inverse should also be true, right? It's you improve the quality of sleep, you can actually perform better through the day and in the night if you were to get up. And so we just look at ourselves as being a non-pharmacological intervention, right? To promote better sleep, and the sort of main benefits of that are reduced falls, reduction in potential use of medications or certain medications. We're also within a sort of memory care context. There's also the expressions of unmet needs, what classically gets termed as behaviors, and the stress and anxiety and confusion and delirium that is that's included in that for the resident, but also the workload, the exposure to risk and harm, physical harm sometimes to the caregiver as well. We're able to reduce some of that. And, as Dr. Laird pointed out, right, that, sleep is a challenge as we get older just in general, but you add a diagnosis to that, like a neurodegenerative disease or cognitive impairment and so on and so forth, it just makes that, it's like 10x the issue. And, just another layer to that is that sleep itself is a challenge, but also just waking life is a challenge. That, folks that are experiencing dementia have lowered coping thresholds just in general. And what I mean by that is the ability to sort of take in your environment and maybe the busyness of an environment and be able to sort of parse that out and realize this is just daily flow, and when the reality is that might not come very easily to you. And conversation or instructions from a caregiver, those kind of things might not come easy to you. They're going to come way less easy to you if you haven't slept well the night before. And so it's one of these. I mean, the reason I called it a tentpole is because it's along with diet and exercise and social engagement. Sleep is one of those key aspects to your 24-hour cycle that if you're not able to achieve that, you have very little hope, I guess, for doing well the rest of the day. That's true for everybody, but particularly true for those living with dementia.
Thank you. Dr. Laird, you had mentioned the importance of the sleep too for, building muscle, which I would imagine, has to do with our balance and reduction of falls and stuff as well. What do you see? I mean, because, a fall, and this is in my eyes again, and I'm not a medical professional, but a fall's not a fall is a fall as we age. There's a lot of ripple effect things that happen with a fall, or we don't recover and bounce back up like we used to. Is that true, or is that just my goofy perception?
Oh no, it's very true. The rates of falls with injury and then falls with injury that then lead to death are much higher as we all get older. So it's very true. And I referenced earlier the fact that the body kind of gets tired of repairing itself in a way. And so there is a reality to the fact that as our body gets older, it's less able to repair itself. So an injury from a fall, even if it's minor at age 85, could become a very different health condition than at age 75. It can have complications of not healing or getting infected if it was a skin tear, for example. You can also have bones that break. And I didn't reference bones, but they're another part of the body that needs to have that constant repair and regrowth cycle going on. And so it's every part of the body that is impacted in that way. And so, I think, I love the idea of the sound is medicine, especially because it comes with no side effects, right, Jeff?
Correct. Yeah, that's big benefit. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as far as adapting to what life sends your way, whether it's an aging impact on your body or the effects of an illness or two or three as we get older. That ability to adapt and find ways towards health is really what this is all about. And I think the sound, the Composure sort of sound is a great example of that, because if you're able to improve, as I said, I start the day with finding out how the sleep is. So if you're able to improve sleep overnight, and you've even managed, if there is some incontinence overnight, you've done it in a way that helps the skin not be as sort of damaged from the presence of incontinence, you're heading into a better day. And then if you continue to control any urinary incontinence or problems during the daytime through some of the things we talked about, potentially you're able to be more active, more social, do more exercise, get the body really moving itself. And that itself is a better setup for a better night's rest, with, again, no side effects as long as you don't get hurt. But it's just this very sort of nice cycle. We talk in geriatrics about all these terrible vicious cycles that can set in, and sleep deprivation is, at the top of some very bad vicious cycles that can set in. And that's what you were referencing at the beginning with, the falls that result in hip fractures and someone passing away somewhat soon after that. That's the vicious cycle in that way. What I'd love to see is more of these we need a good name for the opposite of a vicious cycle, because you can get a good night's rest with some, Composure sound and dry skin with Seni's, briefs. And then you head into a day that's filled with activity and social and family and focused on things that can keep the brain and body healthy. That's a cycle I think we can all embrace. And as we get older, that's a cycle that I think brings quality of life that we'd all hope for our loved ones who are ahead of us. And as we were saying earlier, we're the next generation that's going to be heading into that phase of our life. So yeah, we need a good name for the opposite of a vicious cycle.
How about virtuous cycle?
Oh, I like that. Virtuous cycle or quality cycle.
Right, quality cycle.
Quality cycle. So something like that. But I think, adaptation, when we're young, we think of, I adapted to my, vision difficulty by just putting on a pair of glasses. It isn't as easy as we get older, but it's not impossible. And so that's part of why I like being involved in these kinds of efforts, because these, some of the things we've talked about today are not, they don't have huge barriers to trying them out. So I hope people have heard some things that they can do to maybe try to get into a quality or virtuous cycle.
Wonderful. Deanna, I know you have some situations that you've heard of in terms of your products really being able to improve and reduce the risk of falls, from people living at home on their own to, reducing the work that, required of staff, and improvement of quality of life, of just not having to go through, that vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Of slowing your day down and starting it wrong. It's not where everybody wants to be. Do you want to share one or two of those?
Yeah, so I think of, we get feedback across the different, platforms, but there have been stories that have been told of, if you think of it in general terms, if you have, I think we can keep people together longer, because if you have, someone told me once that the number one reason why males will start to think about placing their loved one, female, into congregate living is because they can't keep doing the changes. And I think of, you could have two people living together for many, many years. And you could have I'm just throwing an example out, but you could have a woman who could be smaller than the husband, and they're taking care of the husband. And if they're up at night, you can actually have two people fall together because they can't lift that other person. So that's an example in general terms where it makes sense for people to use high quality products so they don't have to get up. And then we have all types of related to not only falls, but even most recently in California, our California market, there's a gentleman who was in a community and he kept getting up at night and wandering. And he was, if I have my story correctly, it's one of my colleagues that shared it, but he was in an assisted living community. They did not have room in the memory care community. And so he kept getting up, wandering, and it became an issue. And then he started using our products, slept through the night, had better behaviors, challenges, all decreased, more quality of life, and actually was able to stay in that community. So a host of different things that all pertain to reduction of falls, but also reduction of potential falls, right? So this particular gentleman did not fall, but if you're up and you're wandering because you're uncomfortable, you have that risk. So we just started a podcast in January called Continence Chat, one of my colleagues and I, and it's meant to have customers, resources, different folks on that 30-minute podcast to help talk about some of these things and make more uncomfortable conversations more comfortable. And we're finding in a lot of our home medical supply stores, the owners will be on that podcast and share different stories about their customers that are coming to them. So it's more and more testimonials that are coming across, all related to use of the products.
Well, that's wonderful. In wrapping up, you guys had done your presentation with the Greenhouse Project and the Pioneer Network. I know you've applied again. Any word on that at all?
Not yet. But I think I think they just accepted the presentations and are going through the review process. So we're going to keep fingers crossed that we will be one of the selected ones and go from there. And I know Jeff and I are planning on doing a few more things together, kind of on a sidebar type of things. And Dr. Laird and our folks continue to work through things too. So exciting times, busy times, but good times.
Very busy. The world is spinning at a faster pace every day, I swear. Well, I can't thank you guys enough. This has been just a really interesting show, and you've given us something to think about in just a broader light in many different angles to improve quality of life and to do it in a way that really doesn't have to be complicated and can just have such a massive difference in how we live and how we care for one another. So thank you, each of you again. In wrapping up, I always like to ask our listeners to be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share this show. You don't know who in your sphere of influence needs this information, because this isn't a topic that people are out there talking about typically. And maybe the title of the show will make them click on it and get them thinking in a whole different light. The best thing we can do is to pass on different services, products, and tools that people can tap into. And you might not need it today, but you might need it tomorrow for someone else. Just like Dr. Laird hadn't been touched by dementia last time we talked, but she has now. Things change, and it's better to be prepared than not. So, don't push this stuff aside. It's typically something you are going to need, or someone that you love or care for is going to need in the future. Again, everyone's contact information is in the show notes, so you can get a hold of Deanna with Seni, and we'll just give out verbally here their website. So Seni is SENI-USA.com and /ENUS. You can get a hold of Jeff with Composure by visiting his website, which is composure.net. care. And for Dr. Laird, she is working in Florida, and you can go to her website, which is mymemoryclinic.org. And again, that's for Florida residents, really only that she's licensed to care for there. So again, thank you all so much. We appreciate your time and your expertise, and even more importantly, your passion and your collaboration. You're really making a difference out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.